The council chamber floated in silence above a dying red star. 14 species had built this place together, thousands of years ago, when they first agreed that war between the stars cost too much. The chamber's walls were clear crystal, and beyond them the galaxy turned slowly in the darkness. Today, those walls reflected something the council had never seen before: fear. Commander Knox of the Empire stood before the assembled representatives. His 4 arms trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it. They were warriors. They had fought for 10,000 years and never lost. Their ships were legends. Their soldiers were unstoppable. But Knox looked like he had seen something that broke him. 3 fleets, he said, his voice rough. Battle Groups 7, 12, and 19. Gone, no debris, no signals, nothing. The council chamber erupted in whispers. The representative, a being of pure light inside a containment sphere, pulsed red with confusion. Surely your sensors detected something. An attack pattern, weapon signatures, evidence. Knox's main arms clenched. We detected only chaos. The final transmission from Fleet 12 lasted 8 seconds. The commander said. He paused, seeming to struggle with the words. He said it wasn't ships, it was everywhere, a storm that moved with purpose, a storm that hunted. The ambassador, whose species had lived for 50,000 years, leaned forward. Her ancient eyes narrowed. What weapons did these humans use? That's the problem, Knox said. We sent observation drones to their colonies after the fleets disappeared. We found small settlements, trading posts, research stations. We found a species barely 200 years into space travel. They have basic fusion drives, simple kinetic weapons, nothing that could destroy even one of our ships, let alone 3 entire battle groups. The chamber fell silent. Each representative processed this impossibility. Finally, the Council Prime spoke. She was a species known for logic and patience. Commander Knox, what exactly did your fleets encounter? We don't know, he said quietly. That's why we're here. We demand the Council investigate. These humans have violated the technology prohibition. They must have weapons they're hiding, weapons that break every law we've established. The Council Prime nodded slowly. We will send observers, but Commander, I must ask, why did your fleets enter human space? Knox straightened. The humans have 17 colony worlds, rich in resources, lightly defended. We sent them terms of annexation, standard procedure. They refused. We sent the fleets to enforce compliance. I see, the Council Prime said, and her tone carried disapproval that made even Knox flinch. We will investigate. You will wait for our findings before any further military action. Knox wanted to argue, but one did not argue with the Council Prime. He bowed and left the chamber. 3 days later, a Council observation ship arrived in human space. It approached slowly, broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. Within an hour, a small human vessel approached. The contrast was almost comical. The Council ship was massive, built with technology refined over. The human ship looked like something cobbled together in a workshop. But the human pilot who greeted them seemed friendly. Her name was Park Min, and she smiled easily as she guided them to the nearest human station. The station orbited a blue-green planet called New Sol. It was modest, functional, showing none of the advanced technology the Council expected. People walked through corridors in normal clothing. Children played in a common area. Shops sold food and simple goods. It looked like any frontier settlement in the galaxy. The Council observers met with the station's administrator, an older man named. He welcomed them warmly, offered them refreshments suited to their various biologies, and listened carefully to their questions. We're investigating the disappearance of 3 fleets, the lead observer explained. They entered your space and were never heard from again. Commander Knox claims you possess illegal weapons. Sighed, he looked sad, not defensive. We tried to warn them, we really did. We sent messages every day for 3 weeks. We told them to leave. But how did you destroy their fleets? We didn't destroy anything, said. We asked them to leave. They refused. They said they would take our worlds whether we agreed or not. They said they would kill anyone who resisted. He paused, looking out a window at the planet below. That's when the others got involved. The others, the observer asked. Smiled slightly. You should speak with Admiral. She can explain better than I can. The Council observers were taken to Earth, humanity's home world. They traveled through human space, noting everything. Every station was similar, simple, peaceful. No weapons platforms, no defense grids, no fleets waiting in hidden bases, just people living ordinary lives. Earth was beautiful. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. The Council observers landed at a facility in Geneva where they met Commander Sarah. She was tall, with dark skin and calm eyes. She wore a simple uniform with no weapons. Thank you for coming, she said, gesturing for them to sit. I know you're confused. They were confused too. They didn't understand what they were walking into. Explain, the lead observer said. Sarah folded her hands on the table. How much do you know about human evolution? The observer consulted you evolved on Earth, gravity-based development, oxygen-breathing mammals, standard planetary development pattern. That's what we thought too, Sarah said. For a long time, but we were wrong. Recent archaeological evidence suggests something different. Our ancestors didn't evolve on Earth. We evolved somewhere else. Somewhere cold and dark and empty. The observers looked at each other. You're from another planet. No, Sarah said quietly. Not another planet. We evolved in the void itself, in the darkness between stars. We don't know how or why. We don't know when we came to Earth or what brought us here, but we know we're different from you in fundamental ways. That's impossible, the observer said. Life cannot evolve in vacuum. Sarah smiled sadly. Life as you understand it cannot, but consciousness is stranger than we thought. Quantum mechanics suggests that observation affects reality at the smallest scales. What if some forms of consciousness evolved to exist at that scale? What if awareness itself could persist in the void? You're talking nonsense, another observer said. Am I? Sarah stood and walked to the window. The fleets are not destroyed. They're not dead. They're just somewhere else, being cared for, being held safely until we figure out what to do with them. Where? The lead observer demanded. Sarah turned back to them. Would you like to see? Before they could answer, the lights in the room dimmed. The windows showed the night sky outside, stars bright against the darkness. And then slowly, the stars began to move. No, not the stars. Something between the stars. Shapes that were almost human but not quite. Thousands of them. Millions. Floating in the vacuum, existing where nothing should exist, moving with purpose and grace through the absolute cold of space. The observers stared in horror and wonder. The shapes outside pressed closer to the windows, and now they could see faces. Human faces. Smiling. Waving. Existing impossibly in hard vacuum, without suits, without ships, without anything but themselves. We wear bodies when we're on planets, Sarah said softly. We wear them like you wear clothes. It's comfortable. It helps us connect with physical matter, but we don't need them. Space isn't our enemy. It's our home. It's where we came from. It's what we are. One of the observers made a sound like a whimper. Another began praying in its native language. The lead observer just stared, trying to process what she was seeing. They opened fire on us, Sarah continued. They shot at colonies full of children and families. They shot at unarmed trading ships, so we stopped pretending. We dropped the bodies and showed them what we really are. We surrounded their fleets. We rendered their weapons meaningless. And then we took their ships somewhere safe while we decided what to do. Where? The observer whispered. Somewhere between dimensions, Sarah said. Somewhere the void is thicker. They're alive, unhurt, confused and scared, but safe. We don't want to hurt anyone. We never did. We just want to live peacefully. But if someone threatens our adopted homes, our chosen families, our children, She gestured to the window, to the impossible multitude outside. Then they learned that the void itself can become hostile. The lead observer finally found her voice. "How many of you are there?" Sarah looked out at the crowd of humans floating in space. "How many drops of water are in the ocean? We're consciousness distributed across the quantum foam. We're individuals when we choose to be. We're collective when we need to be. We're here, and we're everywhere, and we've been here since long before any of your species reached the stars." The room was silent, except for the quiet breathing of beings trying not to panic. "We're bringing them back tomorrow," Sarah said. "We're going to let them go home. We're going to ask them to leave us alone, and we're going to hope they're smart enough to do it." She turned back to the observers. "You can tell the council whatever you want. Show them the recordings, explain what you've seen. But understand this, we don't want war. We don't want conquest. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace." "And if the council doesn't agree?" the observer asked. Outside, the millions of humans in the void began to move. They flowed like water, like wind, like thought itself. They merged and separated, forming patterns that hurt to look at, geometries that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Then, as one, they vanished, simply ceased to exist in any observable way. The sensors on the council ship screamed alerts. Matter had just disappeared from reality. Conservation of energy had been violated. The laws of physics had been broken. And then just as suddenly they were back, solid, smiling, waving. Sarah looked at the observers with infinite sadness in her eyes. "If the council doesn't agree," she said softly, "then you'll learn what it means when the storm decides to stop being gentle. I really hope it doesn't come to that." The observers left the next morning. They said nothing during the journey back to the council chamber. They couldn't find words for what they'd seen. When they arrived, they simply uploaded the recordings and waited while the council prime watched in silence. Finally, she spoke. "Seal this information. Council access only. If this becomes public, there will be panic across the galaxy." "What about the?" one observer asked. The council prime looked older than her years. "We wait. We see if they're wise enough to accept peace." But Knox was not wise. He was proud. He was angry. And when the fleets reappeared above their home world, unharmed but humiliated, he began planning revenge. He gathered allies. He called in favors. He built an armada unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 4,000 warships, weapons that could crack planets, shields that could survive supernovas, the largest military force in recorded history. And he pointed them all at Earth. The council tried to stop him. They sent messages, warnings, pleas, but Knox would not listen. His honor demanded satisfaction. His pride demanded victory. He would show these humans that they could not be intimidated. The armada moved through space like a river of metal and death. It took 3 weeks to reach human space. During that time, the council watched helplessly. Some species began evacuating their border stations. Others reinforced their defenses. Everyone waited to see what would happen when unstoppable force met immovable object. The armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Knox stood on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by holographic displays showing his massive fleet. He opened a channel to Earth. "Humans," he said, his voice carrying to every ship, every station, every settlement in the system. "You have humiliated the Empire. You have used forbidden weapons against us. Now you will face justice. Surrender or be destroyed." For a long moment there was no response. Then Sarah's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired, sad, resigned. "We asked you to leave," she said simply. "We tried to warn you. We tried to show you the truth gently, but you wouldn't listen." She paused. "I'm sorry for what happens next." Knox laughed. "You're sorry I have 4,000. He stopped. Every sensor on every ship in his armada had just gone mad. The void between stars was moving. Space itself was rippling like water. And then, slowly, the stars began to disappear. Not because they went out, because something was blocking them, something vast and dark and full of purpose. Humans, hundreds of thousands of them, maybe millions, floating in hard vacuum, surrounding the armada like a living cloud, moving with perfect coordination, their eyes reflecting starlight in the darkness. Knox stared at his screens. His crew began shouting reports. Ships throughout the fleet were reporting the same thing. They were surrounded, completely. The void itself had become hostile. "Fire," Knox whispered. Then louder, "Fire, fire everything." The armada opened up with every weapon it had. Particle beams lanced through space. Missiles streaked toward the human cloud. Kinetic rounds tore through the void at relativistic speeds. Enough firepower to destroy 100 worlds lit up the darkness. And the humans simply absorbed it all. Beams passed through bodies that reformed like smoke. Explosions consumed crowds that flowed back together like water. Solid rounds shattered bones that knit themselves whole before the fragments could separate. The humans weren't fighting back. They were just there, present, undeniable, impossible. Knox watched his weapons fail. He watched his fleet fire until their magazines were empty and their batteries were drained. He watched the humans move closer, pressing against his ships like fog, seeping into every crack and gap in the armor. Then one of them was standing on his bridge, a human man, young, with dark hair and darker eyes. He had simply appeared, walking through the sealed blast door like it was air. He wore no suit, no equipment, nothing but simple clothes, though every sensor said the bridge was in vacuum and had been breached. "My name is," the human said in perfect. "We need to talk." Knox reached for his sidearm, but just looked at him, and the weapon simply fell apart, its components separating at the molecular level and drifting to the floor. "We're not your enemy," said. "We never were, we just wanted to be left alone, but you couldn't do that, you had to prove something, you had to show that you were strong." He looked around the bridge at the crew frozen in terror. "Do you feel strong now?" "What are you?" Knox whispered. Smiled sadly. "We're what happens when consciousness learns to exist without matter. We're what evolution looks like in the void between dimensions. We're older than your civilization, older than most stars, and we were here long before you learned to leave your planet." He walked to looking out at the armada surrounded by his people. "We evolved in the spaces between things, in the quantum foam, in the darkness that connects everything. Your universe is denser than where we came from. Taking physical form here is like wearing something heavy and uncomfortable. But we did it because we wanted to experience what you experience. We wanted to know what it's like to have boundaries, to be separate, to be individual." "Why Earth?" Knox asked. "Why not Earth?" replied. "It was beautiful, empty of sentient life. We settled there millions of years ago in your time, though time means something different to us. We learned to be human. We learned to love and laugh and cry. We learned to build and create and dream. We chose to be vulnerable because vulnerability is what makes existence precious." He turned back to Knox. "But we're not really vulnerable. We can't be. You can't kill what doesn't truly die. You can't hurt what exists in every possible place at once. Your weapons are meaningless to us. Your fleet is meaningless. Everything you think makes you powerful is nothing compared to what we are." Knox felt something break inside him. All his pride, all his certainty, crumbled to dust. "What will you do to us?" he asked quietly. Looked at him for a long moment. "We'll let you go home. We'll send your fleet back intact with every soldier unharmed. And we'll give you a choice. Leave us alone and we'll continue pretending. We'll keep living in our stations and our ships. We'll keep acting like we're limited and vulnerable and just like you. We'll maintain the fiction that lets you sleep at night. And if we don't leave you alone?" Walked to the edge of the bridge, where the breach had been sealed by humans simply standing in the gap. He looked out at the void, at his people floating in the darkness. "Then you'll learn what it means when the void decides to stop being empty," he said softly. "You'll learn that every time you've traveled through space, you've been swimming in our ocean. Every time you've looked at the stars, you've been looking at our home. and you'll learn that mercy is a choice we make, not a weakness we have." He turned back one last time. "I really hope you choose wisely." Then he was gone, simply ceased to exist on the bridge. Outside, the humans began to disperse, flowing away from the fleet like morning fog burning off in sunlight. Within minutes, the armada was alone again, floating in empty space, completely unharmed but forever changed. Knox stood in silence for a long time. Finally, he gave the order to return home. Not a single ship questioned him. They'd all seen enough. The galaxy learned what happened within days. The recordings spread despite the Council's attempts to contain them. Every species, every civilization, every settlement saw the truth. Humans were not like them. Humans had never been like them. The friendly neighbors, the peaceful traders, the modest colonists, they were all pretending. They were all wearing masks. And behind those masks was something vast and ancient and incomprehensible. Some species panicked. They closed their borders and banned humans from their space. They built new weapons and hoped they would somehow work better than this had. They huddled in their stations and their worlds and told themselves comforting lies about being safe. Other species reached out. They sent messages of friendship, of curiosity, of wonder. They asked questions and hoped for answers. They looked at the humans in their midst and saw them differently now. Not as threats, but as something stranger and more beautiful than they'd imagined. The council convened in emergency session. They debated for 3 days straight. Some wanted to quarantine humanity. Others wanted to embrace them. Everyone agreed that the galaxy had changed forever. Finally, Sarah came before them one more time. She stood in the center of the chamber, alone, facing 14 species who didn't know whether to fear her or thank her. "We have a proposal," she said simply. "A new accord, a new way forward." The Council Prime gestured for her to continue. "We'll keep pretending," Sarah said. "We'll keep living in bodies. We'll keep using ships and stations. We'll keep acting like we're limited and vulnerable. We'll maintain the comfortable fiction that lets you think of us as neighbors instead of as something alien and strange." "Why would you do that?" the ambassador asked. Sarah smiled. "Because it's not actually a fiction. We are your neighbors. We are limited, just in different ways than you are. We're vulnerable to loneliness and grief and loss of meaning. We struggle with questions you've already answered. We're immortal and infinite, and we don't know why we exist or what we're supposed to do with eternity." She walked slowly around the chamber, meeting each representative's eyes. "You know how to build civilizations that last. You know how to create art and culture and purpose. You know how to live meaningful lives in the time you have. We know how to exist forever, but we don't know how to make that existence matter. We need you as much as you need us." "What do you need from us?" the Council Prime asked. "Teach us," Sarah said simply. "Teach us how to be mortal in the ways that count. Teach us how to value time when we have infinite amounts of it. Teach us how to create meaning. And in exchange, we'll protect you. Not because you're weak, but because you're precious. Because you have what we lack, the urgency that comes from knowing your time is limited, the intensity that comes from knowing you'll die, the beauty that comes from impermanence." The chamber was silent. Finally, the ancient ambassador spoke. "You could have conquered the galaxy eons ago. You could rule us all. Why don't you?" Sarah's expression was infinitely sad. "Because ruling is easy, living is hard, conquest is simple, meaning is complex. We don't want subjects, we want friends. We don't want to dominate, we want to belong." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "There are older things than us in the void, stranger things, things that stop pretending to be anything but what they are. They're powerful beyond measure and completely empty. They exist without purpose, without joy, without anything but cold consciousness stretching across reality. We saw them and we chose something different. We chose limitation. We chose boundaries. We chose to be human with everything that means." "What does it mean?" the Council Prime asked softly. "It means we can be hurt," Sarah said. "Not physically, but emotionally. It means we can lose people we love. It means we can fail and doubt and fear. It means we're not gods. We're just people who happen to exist in a strange way. And we want to stay people. We want to stay connected to the things that make existence worth existing for. The council deliberated for hours after she left. They argued and debated and considered every angle, but in the end the decision was unanimous. They would accept humanity's proposal. They would accept the new accord. 6 cycles passed. The galaxy adjusted to its new reality. Some species remained distant, wary of humans despite the promises of peace, but most embraced the change. Human scientists shared their knowledge freely, explaining the quantum nature of consciousness, teaching physics that had been hidden in plain sight for. In exchange, humans learned philosophy and art and culture from species who had refined these things over tens of thousands of years. Children of different species played together on station common areas. Trading ships carried goods and ideas across the void. The humbled but wiser became some of humanity's strongest allies. Knox himself retired from military service and became a philosopher, writing treatises on the nature of power and the importance of humility. Sarah stood in the council chamber one more time, 6 cycles after everything changed. She was there to sign the official documents, to make the accord permanent and binding. But before the signing, she asked to speak. "I want to tell you something we haven't shared before," she said. "Something you deserve to know now that we're partners instead of strangers." The council listened carefully. Even after 6 cycles, Sarah could still make them nervous. "We're not the only ones," she said quietly. "In the deep void in the spaces between dimensions there are others, other forms of consciousness that evolved in the darkness. Some are like us, some are very different, most want nothing to do with physical reality, but they're out there, watching, waiting." The chamber erupted in alarm. Sarah raised her hand for silence. "They're not threats," she said. "They're not hostile, but they're powerful in ways that would break your minds to comprehend. We've been shielding you from them since we settled on Earth. We've been acting as a buffer, keeping them from noticing you too much. Because if they ever decide to interact with physical matter the way we do—" She paused. "Well, it would be like you suddenly noticing the bacteria in your gut and deciding to have a conversation with them. The attention alone might be devastating." "Why tell us now?" the Council Prime asked, her voice steady despite obvious fear. "Because you deserve the truth," Sarah said. "Because hiding things from partners isn't right. And because eventually, in a few thousand years or a few million, you'll be ready to meet them. Your civilizations will mature. Your understanding will deepen. And when that time comes, we'll be there to make introductions, to help you navigate that impossible gulf between matter-based life and void-based consciousness." She smiled then, warm and genuine. "But that's a long way off. For now we have more immediate concerns, like the trade dispute between thee and like the resource rights in the Gamma sector, like all the small, important, everyday problems that make up civilization." She gestured to the documents waiting to be signed. "Like making this accord official." The signing took an hour. Every species representative added their mark, their signature, their binding agreement. When it was done, Sarah looked out at the assembled species and felt something she'd rarely experienced in her long existence. She felt hope. On Earth, children played in parks, chasing each other through grass and sunlight. In the stations scattered across human space, families went about their daily lives, working and laughing and living. And in the void between stars, in the quantum foam that underlay reality itself, humanity maintained its eternal vigil, watching, protecting, being both the shield and the bridge between worlds. Floated in the darkness between 2 stars, his physical form abandoned, his consciousness spread across light years of space. Another void being drifted near him, ancient and strange, curious about these humans who had chosen limitation over infinity. "Why do you restrain yourselves?" the being asked, its thoughts reverberating through dimensions. Considered the question. Below him, across parsecs of space, he could feel his people, living their human lives, experiencing joy and sorrow and love and loss, choosing to be small when they could be infinite, choosing to be vulnerable when they could be invincible. Because being everything means being nothing, he finally answered. Because unlimited power makes every choice meaningless. Because the most human thing we ever learned was how to care about something enough that losing it would hurt. The being pondered this. And if they betray you, these physical species you protect, then we'll be hurt, said simply. And being able to be hurt is what makes us human. It's what makes any of this matter. The being drifted away, thinking alien thoughts, unconvinced but curious. Let it go. He had learned long ago that you couldn't explain meaning to something that had never risked losing anything. He pulled his consciousness back together, reforming his physical body on a human station orbiting Mars. He walked through the corridors, nodding to people he knew, smiling at children who waved at him. They knew what he was. Everyone knew now. But they weren't afraid. They were just neighbors sharing a station, sharing a life, sharing the small moments that made existence precious. Ina, overlooking the red planet, sat down across from Sarah. She was drinking coffee, reading a book, looking perfectly human except for the slight smile that suggested she knew things that would break normal minds. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked, choosing this, choosing limitation. Sarah looked up from her book. She thought about the question, really considered it. Then she looked out the window at Mars, at the planet humanity had transformed, at the ships coming and going, at the evidence of life and activity and purpose. "Every day," she said honestly, "and every day I choose it again, because regret means you care about the choice, and caring is what makes us human." Nodded, he understood. They all understood. That was the secret the galaxy was still learning, would keep learning for to come. Power wasn't what made you strong. Choice was. The choice to be vulnerable. The choice to care. The choice to make your existence mean something even when nothing really matters in the end. Outside, in the vast darkness between stars, the void stretched forever. And in that void, humanity existed as both storm and shelter, both threat and protector, both infinite and intimately, beautifully, tragically finite. The galaxy had changed, the storm had been human, and that changed everything. But in the end, the most important change was the simplest one. Humans had chosen to be people instead of gods, and in that choice, they'd found something worth existing for. The choice to love, the choice to protect, the choice to make every moment matter because they'd decided it should. And that, more than any power or any technology or any impossible ability to exist in the void itself, was what made them truly human. That was what changed everything.